Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're back over on the YouTube account and we're going to be breaking down our Awakened heroes and our Highborn heroes according to the AFK guys. And I really want to break this down because it is super important when it comes to resource generation, especially when it comes to those Draconic heroes. They are super expensive to build. Now, when we start thinking about the primary 3 game modes within AFK Arena, we have the Treasure Scramble, we also do have the Cursed Realm and the Nightmare Corridor. That is where these heroes are seeing a ton of utility. When you start looking at tower formations, when you look at campaign progression, even looking at the Temporal Rift, a lot of these heroes can be used in there, but if you don't have them overall, you can still do exceptionally well in a lot of different game modes. But these are where the places and where these heroes really do shine. So let's hop over, we'll break down this guide, and I want to, again, get a little bit in depth with it so you know exactly what you're looking at. All right, so here is the guide from Awakened and Highborn priorities according to the AFK guys. Now, I know when we did the stream, you guys were asking me to cover this, so absolutely, definitely want to cover this. Now, looking at our top tier, so when we think of the tier list that I do every single month, when we look at this top tier, Athalia and Leica are absolutely in there, and they are in there for really good reason. When you start looking at a majority of formations that we have, you can see the Nightmare Corridor, the Treasure Scramble, and the Cursed Realm. Very prevalent for both of them. And of course, when it comes to the best in slot damage dealer for some of those comps, they are the hero where if you don't have the Awakened version of Athalia, if you don't have that Awakened version of Leica, it is pretty much up to you to either substitute or it is building an entire new formation because you don't have the damage dealing capability that they have within these heroes. Now, you also notice in this S tier, we do have the Awakened version of Chimera. Now, when it comes to the Treasure Scramble and the Cursed Realm, she does incredibly well. And even looking at Chimera and thinking of Leica, they are very unique in what they do with their skills and abilities, the way that, Chimera works at a tank to bring in the heroes and to lead like what Leica does. They are very unique in the methodology. And of course, when it comes to Chimera, very, again, unique with the SP effect that she does possess. Athalia is just straight up damage. That's the reason why she's top tier, is she can put out very big burst damage very fast. And of course, it's kind of hard to contain her because she does ult super fast as well. And she has the ability to buff herself up, which is really cool when it comes to really building out and knowing where the heroes are being used. Now, when we start looking at the A tier, you can see in here we have Treasure Scramble and we have Cursed Realm. Now, the thing with the Awakened version of Lucius is we usually don't see him in the Nightmare Corridor because of the ability to do a lot of heavy burst damage. Usually Nightmare Corridor, even thinking of best in slot teams, you're talking 8 to 15 seconds before that game mode is complete, which of course makes Thorin, and again, not as a primary damage dealer, but definitely as a secondary damage dealer, is doing incredibly well in formations with Rendell right now. And of course, that is used within the Nightmare Corridor. Treasure Scramble, he is actually super broken within the SEAL team because you have to kill him a multitude of times, or he kills himself a multitude of times, making it very hard to break through and get through the PvP team with the SEAL team overall. And Lucius in here, one thing to note, and I always do say this, when it comes to Lucius, he does require a very big build out to perform exceptionally well. Plus 40 signature item, 9 of 9 furniture at a minimum, and usually about a 67 to a 72 engraving to get him to do the damage and have the survivability that you really need him to have. Now, when it comes to Thorin, requires a little bit of a lesser build, but still a decent build on there. Now, when, of course, it comes to the Awakened heroes in general, getting them to a 30960 is a requirement because you will unlock all of their skills and abilities. If you don't have them built up to that point, you're not going to have the utilization of the hero, or essentially you're missing 25% of the hero's skills or abilities because you don't have them built out. Now, as we start going down to the B tier, I'm still seeing the Awakened version of Belinda used in a couple places. The Cursed Realm right here, I believe even as a secondary damage dealer within the Nightmare Corridor, every now and then we're still seeing her. Treasure Scramble, when you're starting to get to a multitude of teams, you can see her in there, but a lot of players overall have slowly kind of faded her out, and she is going to continue to kind of fade out. But of course, Cursed Realm still does well when you have her fully buffed. Now, of course, Sophia, the awakened version of Sophia, again, one with a pretty good utility. Again, we're starting to see her kind of come down the tier list. Used to be the A tier, used to be very high in the tier, but overall still does have some utility with the shielding. PvP does exceptionally well. And overall, I feel like in the future, with all of the support heroes we're getting, she could be a hero we could unfortunately see slip down a little bit when it comes to the tier list. Now, the awakened version of Iran, Treasure Scramble, and the Cursed Realm, absolutely. Again, when it comes to really huge burst damage, Nightmare Corridor is a little bit more difficult to deal with. We have seen him as of today in a couple formations, but overall, not in all the iterations, not as a primary damage dealer. And of course, the big problem that we see with him is we're starting to see Skyland replace him in a couple places. If you have Skyland built, that's the big thing where a lot of players, including myself, do not have Skyland built. So unfortunately, not going to be a hero that I'm going to be able to use. Now, looking at the C tier, Treasure Scramble and the Cursed Realm in there, again, with the Nightmare Corridor, it's very unique. We're not seeing Gavis in there, but he is very strong in both of these and used in a few different formations. In here, Nightmare Corridor, the awakened version of Thane can put out damage super fast. So very similar to what we see with like a Scarlet hero, because of the burst damage capability of this hero, makes him prevalent in Nightmare Corridor. But unfortunately, at this point, that is literally the only place that he is being worked or being used at all. So if you don't have him, he could be a pretty good hero to go ahead and murk. Now, when we look into the C tier, the Cursed Realm, the Cursed Realm, the Cursed Realm, and the Nightmare Corridor, again, not seeing a huge utility with the awakened version of Solus within the Nightmare Corridor, but still being used in a formation. And then, of course, when it comes to Entendre, every now and then we do see her in a PvP formation within the Treasure Scramble once you do get to a multitude of teams. Unfortunately, at this point, Baden is pretty much out. He's been unfortunately replaced by a couple other heroes that have came out, not seeing a ton of utility. And then Zora is new and could rank higher. We are starting to see her in the Treasure Scramble, and as of today, we are actually starting to see her in the Cursed Realm as well. So I feel like we're starting to see a lot more utility, which honestly, I would probably put her maybe in the BC tier as it sits right now. We have to see, and of course, with Zora being new, we have to see all of the iterations that she is being run through, because we haven't got through all of the Nightmare Corridor or the Cursed Realm or the Treasure Scramble for that matter, with the new hero being up, with the new hero being built at all. So again, it's going to take a while to see exactly where she does fit in. And then of course right here, Treasure Scramble with Matria. She's another one, again, when you start getting the multitude of teams. I don't even think I run her in the Treasure Scramble as it sits today. So she is kind of tied to the Hippo Tower, is where a lot of players are running her. Or if you don't have all of these heroes built in their entirety like I do, you can use her in there with some pretty strong comps, but it does require having some other Hippos built. And then, of course, my big Brutus. I absolutely love Brutus. Guys, when Brutus came out, he was such a very, very big game changer to the Mauler Tower. Goes into the D tier, but he is definitely the SSS top tier. When it comes to the Mauler Tower, he still does incredibly well within the game mode. Unfortunately, Awakened Disease has never been used and has lived in the F tier. The Awakened version of Taylene, again, low tier for pretty much any game mode not being used. But when it comes to tower progression, she still does very well. Now, looking at the guild store, we have Hildwyn and we have Eugene. AFK guys say to go in for Hildwyn, which I absolutely agree with. Now, the caveat to this is getting Hildwyn to 1 star. So once you do have if you have Hildwyn built up to 1 star, I would swap over to Eugene. I am leaving Hildwyn as it sits right now at 1 star, building Eugene all the way up to 5 stars. Once Eugene is completed, I will go back to Hildwyn. But the priority within the guild store, honestly, is to get these heroes up to Ascended with 1 star to engrave them. And that is the point you want to leave them. And of course, out of these 2 heroes, and again, thinking of heroes in general, you always want to buy the insignias first, and you want to buy the time emblems. Then you want to do Hildwyn up to 1 star, then Eugene up to 1 star, and that is kind of how we build them. So looking at the Highborns, if you are lucky enough to build any of these Highborns, a lot of players that are free to play have 1 or maybe 1 partially built Highborn. I know a lot of players did come in here for the Cursed Realm and did come in here with building the Highborn version of Gwen. Overall, if you built Gwen, chances are very similar to myself. I don't have the resources for land. I have zero resources or zero copies at all of Skyland. So depending on exactly what game mode you're looking at and which one you want to build, hopefully you haven't burned all your insignias like I did when Gwen came out. We even purchased quite a few of insignias, but as of right now, we do have land. I need 2 more copies. I think it's still 2 more copies to get her up to Ascended. And then, of course, to take her a little bit further, we need 3 more copies to add the star in there because unfortunately, we cannot summon for these with the Highborn Draconic heroes within the Stargazer itself. So unfortunately, we still can't get them there. It would be really cool if we could get them to essentially up to that Ascended level and then pop them in like we do with Awakens right into the Stargazer to use diamonds to finish them off. But that is not the case as it sits today. And like I said, even utility-wise, land is still number 1. Cursed Realm, as you can see with Gwen, because even out here with the Nightmare Corridor, land is still used a lot of other places. Land is used in the Treasure Scramble. I use land all the time. Land is also used in the Cursed Realm. I use land in really all of these formations together. So I feel like, again, land outside of the Nightmare Corridor still being used in a lot of different places. Cursed Realm, Gwen is being used, not being used in a lot of other game modes. And then, of course, we're seeing Skyland being used and a few other places. So, all right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. Big shout out to the AFK guys. Definitely wanted to cover this. A lot of players had questions about it, wanted to break it down. And if you have questions, definitely let me know down below. And I will put a link to these guides down below as well, so you can check them out and bookmark them. Make sure you use these guys. It is super important. So again, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.